It's early morning of the 14th of May, 1264. King Henry of England is ensconced in the Priory of St. Pancras in the quaint town of Lewes. The royal camp, pitched all around the town, is slowly waking up, and an ordinary morning's bustle is mounting. Lazily, Henry was preparing for his first meal when he noticed a couple of servants pointing their fingers at something in the distance. Intrigued, Henry leaned on his bench to see what sparked such interest. To his astonishment, many hundreds, if not thousands, of enemy soldiers were assembling a battle line on the hillside. He didn't even have to yell orders. The rising clamor indicated sufficiently that his men were already scrambling. The battle was about to begin. This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. With thousands of non-fiction titles covering a wide range of topics, CuriosityStream is a documentary-focused streaming service that is sure to leave you spoiled for choice. A fine example for those that enjoy our content would be The History of Weapons, a detailed series looking at the tools of war over the ages. But it isn't just history you'll find. There's also content on science, technology, nature, and more. For just $3 a month, you'll get full access to their film library. But if you use the link in the description below and use the promotional code BazBattles, you'll get a 30-day trial absolutely free. Available on all major platforms, CuriosityStream has some of the top award-winning documentaries in the world. Hit the link in the description below and see for yourself. It is the latter half of the 13th century. The Kingdom of England is ruled by Henry of Winchester, the oldest son of late King John Lackland. Throughout more than 20 years of his personal reign, Henry established himself as an ambitious yet arrogant monarch with limited political acumen and diplomatic foresight. These traits, together with the king's tendency to adopt dictatorial methods to exert royal authority, put a serious strain on his relationship with influential Anglo-Norman magnates and landowners, who gradually became more and more discontented over many of the king's decisions and habits. It's fair to mention that Henry had no easy start when he ascended to the throne at the age of 9, amidst a baronial revolt sparked by his father. Still, he lacked the ability to rule effectively, and many of his blunders not only deepened his ongoing problems, but also created a couple of new ones. Henry involved himself in an unsuccessful military campaign in southern France, hoping to reclaim his family domain, a costly endeavor that drained the royal treasury and yielded him virtually nothing. During his frequent voyages, the country was managed by Henry's foreign counselors and courtiers of French origin, which angered English magnates even further. Yet despite his flaws and negligence, Henry usually managed to appease the Anglo-Norman lords and keep his strong position on the throne, at least until 1254. That year, the English king offered to finance the papal wars in Sicily in exchange for the Sicilian crown for his infant son, Edmund. This bright idea quickly ran the royal treasury dry, forcing a bankrupted Henry to turn to his barons and ask for funds. It was a good opportunity for the English magnates to finally force Henry to yield some of his authority and sign the Provisions of Oxford, a plan of reform formulated by a commission consisting of nobles chosen by both the king and the barons. Without delving too deeply into the details, the Provisions of Oxford effectively curbed Henry's authority, and he made his best efforts to avoid these baronial arrangements, asking the Pope to issue a bull to annul the provisions. This of course sparked unrest among the barons, and Henry appealed to the French king Louis IX for arbitration in the matter. In January 1264, Louis took a position on Henry's side, and although this quelled the more conservative barons, a civil war seemed to be inevitable as a radical faction rose up in rebellion. The rebels were led by Simon de Montfort, a French-born Earl of Leicester and Henry's longtime advisor and favorite. Despite being one of those despised foreigners on the royal court, thanks to his political and military skills, de Montfort eventually became a respected figure in England. Over the years, he grew in conviction, feeling that Henry was simply unfit to rule, and in the end, this feeling pushed de Montfort to join the baronial opposition. The very first months of 1264 saw both sides taking key castles and recruiting armies. King Henry raised a force in the Midlands and proceeded to undermine rebel garrisons in the area before marching south to face de Montfort's main army gathering in southeast England. Earl Simon, on the other hand, was determined to face the royal host as soon as possible, as he predicted that support for the rebellion, though widespread, would not provide enough fighting men to match the constant rising numbers of King Henry. In the beginning of May, the king's host reached southern England and proceeded to the town of Lewes, still being held by the royalists, to await reinforcements, resupply, and rest after the tiresome first months of the campaign. Knowing that time was not working in his favor, Earl Simon moved his host to the vicinity of Lewes, taking up positions on the Offham Hill northwest of the town. The baronial army was visibly less numerous than what Henry brought to Lewes, counting roughly at around 5,000 men. In comparison, the king's host was probably twice as numerous, though it's not clear whether some of his men were out of the town at the time of the battle. Henry, whose men were scattered in and around the town, neglected to properly scout the area and was a bit surprised when he learned that de Montfort had suddenly emerged in the area with an armed contingent. It took several hours for the royalists to assemble the battle line, yet the one who was quickest with deployment was Prince Edward, Henry's son and heir, who commanded the heavy cavalry unit stationing a bit to the north around Lewes Castle. Although already 25, Edward was still a bit of a hot-headed youngster, and he didn't have the patience to wait for the rest of the army to take their positions, and launched an uphill attack on the baronial left flank, which consisted primarily of untrained recruits. The heavy cavalry charge, even though uphill, hit the rebel units hard, dealing massive damage and immediately breaking their cohesion. In no time, the entire left flank of de Montfort's army was in full rout, being chased by a battle-frenzied Prince Edward, who pursued the fleeing enemy to increase the death toll. It must have been a significant morale hit for the rest of the baronial army, but this was just the beginning of the battle. Eventually, the main royalist army finished lining up at the bottom of the hill, and King Henry, now without the support of mounted units, commanded his troops to move uphill to challenge the enemy, hoping that his greater numbers would be enough to overcome the rebels. Henry's infantry performed the unenviable task and were more than halfway when Simon de Montfort gave the order to attack. The rebel units rushed out and fell upon enemy infantry, disrupting their uphill march. Though only the center of the baronial host consisted of more experienced and dependable units, the attack caught Henry's men unprepared for the charge, and as time passed, the rebels made good use of the higher ground and slowly pushed the royalists down the hill, killing or crippling many enemy soldiers. Soon, facing increasingly unfavorable odds and with mounting losses, Henry's lines started to break, and the king was captured by the rebel forces. In that moment, the integrity of the royalist army was lost, and Henry's men were in full rout. Possibly a quarter of his contingent perished trying to push on the Offham Hill. Just as the battle was ending, Prince Edward returned to the battlefield to see his father being taken captive and the royalist army beaten. Though Edward put many rebels to the sword during his pursuit, he was forced to accept de Montfort's peace terms and enter rebel custody. It was a huge victory for the rebelling Simon de Montfort and his followers. In but an instant, the Earl of Leicester became the most powerful man in England and was given the freedom to bring the baronial requests to life, calling for elections for a truly representative Parliament of England. Yet even though the rebels had won the battle, the war for dominance was certainly not over.